in the name of God. My presentation subject is about the effects of inactivating yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, on modulating gut microbiota and the survival rate of cells. In this slide, you see some yeast that isolated in agriculture, and some favorable qualities of yeast. You can see many microbiological growths and agars are soluble as culture media. Yeast may be of physiological importance even when according for less than 1% of the total microbial isolates. And some extracts like beta-glucans are used as immunostimulants. What about yeast classification? Yeast occurring in fish microbiota may classify into distinct phyla of the fungal candida, Ascomycota and Basiomycota. About effector mechanism, the mechanism of affection of yeast in aquaculture, you see. Stimulation the immune response, effects on fish metabolism, and acceleration of the maturation of the digestive. Some two previous observations that has done before this. You see that the different levels of inactive yeast cell wall showed an effect on certain immune parameters in Leptopeneus vanum. And in rainbow trout, Oncholichus micis, from using inactive yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, a significant increase was observed in survival and other growth factors. Therefore, in the present study, the survival and modulating bacteria data were used to evaluate the effect of yeast on serum. In this slide, you see a picture of serum. And serum is an ornamental fish that are known as banded cichlids and hierocychlids. Serum is a beautiful fish and is the second ornamental fish in Iran that is economic for house business. Environmental factors. You see the environmental factors. Dissolved oxygen must be upper than 5.5, and the degree of hardness between 6 and 7. pH must be between 6 and 7.5, and temperature must be between 28 to 32. And materials and methods about my search. The experiments were performed at the Agriculture Education Center of Fars, Shiraz, Iran. A batch of 480 uniformly sized serum, about 1.40, at the first feeding bit by 1 divided into 12 groups, and the dosage of inactive yeast 0.51 and 2 grams per kilogram were tested in 3 replicate groups of serum with an average initial weight of 1.40 grams for 4 weeks. For different experiments, there are 3 groups of 40 individuals in each, and each group was placed into an identical 60-liter tank. The tanks were cleaned daily to avoid pollution by overfeeding or by diet particles. Compressed air was used to aerate the tanks using a number of narrow pipes connected to bubblers. And the photo period was 12-hour lightness and 12-hour darkness. And the light intensity was kept at 40 lux on the tank surface. Compressed air was used to aerate the tanks using a number of narrow pipes connected to bubblers. Excuse me. And about feeding. The 4 feeding experiments were artificial food covered with fish oil without yeast. It was our control group. Artificial food mixed with 0.5 gram per kilogram Saccharomyces cerevisiae, it was our T1 treatment. And artificial food mixed with 1 grams T2, artificial food mixed with 2 grams per kilogram Saccharomyces cerevisiae, that it was our T3. The artificial food with biomass optimal starts in 0.5 millimeter size. And our groups were fed 3 times per day. The daily ration was about 5% of their body weight per day. Probiotic yeast of Saccharomyces cerevisiae strain Institute Oxford, Italy, obtained as commercial preparation. And how we prepare the yeast? We powdered by grinding to 100 microgram and suspended in fish oil, and the plates were coated with the well-shaped suspension. Obtained concentration of 10 power of 6 in CFU. The water quality was regularly monitored. The temperature was maintained at 28, and the oxygen concentration varied between 5 and 7 milligram per liter. And the total ammonia nitrogen was always maintained below 0.5 milligram per liter, and the pH was about 7. Isolation of bacteria from the blood of the fish post-rot and administration of this according to Hema. 2 fish from each group collected and disinfected with alcohol 70%. The gut was removed carefully, and the gut was divided into 3 parts. You can see that we used MRS agar for cultivation, the lactobacillus, and Bacillus cereus agar for cereus, and we use yeast extract agar medium for cultivation of yeast. You can see the results. You see that there is a significant difference in total count between control group and other groups that fed by yeast. And the most number of total count was observed in control groups. About lactobacillus, there is a significant difference between control group and other treatments that were by yeast, and you see the high number for lactobacillus is in T3. Results indicate the absence of a live yeast in our treatment, including control group. What about survival? Survival increased among treatments. And you can see the high significant difference between control and other treatment groups. And the best survival is observed in T2 and T3 treatment. It seems that the contents of inactive yeast cells consumed by lactobacillus bacteria, so the total number of lactobacillus increased. In bacterial clearance, Leptopenus vanami were better in shrimp-fed diets supplemented with 1 and 2 grams per kilogram inactive yeast cell wall as compared with the control group. And having antagonistic properties of these bacteria could reduce the number of other bacteria in the gut. A similar result you see in European sea bass. Yeast incorporation improved survival 10%. And using our inactive yeast cell wall to lobster larvae decreased mortality. Yeast-based starter fed to carp larvae resulted in a higher survival rate. Inactive yeast can synergistically active the innate immune responses of cultural organisms with use as a dietary supplement. According to the results of this experiment, the level of 2 multiplied by 10 power of 12 in CFU or 2 grams in kilogram by mol is suggested for modulating aerosolus intestinal microbiota. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. Any questions?